Hello, my name is Sara Lazar, and I'm a neuroscientist at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And today I'm going to be talking about the neural development of psychosocial development. Back in the 1960s, Jane Levenger proposed and validated an influential model of psychosocial development. And in this model, she states that we develop socially starting at birth in very discrete stages, and that uh, development continues throughout our entire lifespan. Early stages are very self-centered and very egotistical, and we tend to have poor regulation, emotion regulation, and everything is it's my way or the highway. Conversely, at later stages, people tend to be much more altruistic and they're very world-centric. And they tend to be have very good emotion regulation and a lot of care and concern for other people, regardless of their ideological background or their viewpoints. Psychosocial development has been strongly correlated with numerous measures related to flourishing, including emotion regulation, empathy, ethical behavior, cooperation, and wisdom. Unfortunately, the model is really complex and it was not well understood at the time. And there was a lot of discussion and arguments that really got bogged down in semantics and ideological disagreements. In particular, critics pointed to evidence that suggested that rather than occurring in stages, that development occurred linearly and continuously. Also, the test used to assess people's stage is language-based, and many people thought that the test was really just capturing intelligence rather than anything having to do with the self. Unfortunately, for these reasons, the model was left behind, and today has been all but forgotten. Okay, for the past 20 years, my work has been focused on the beneficial effects of meditation. And when I learned about this model, I was intrigued because the description of people at the latest stages of development is very similar to the description of people who've been practicing meditation for many, many years. And so I wondered if that was indeed the case. And I had obtained funding to do a study comparing long-term meditation practitioners, long-term yoga practitioners, and controls. And so I decided to add this test to test the hypothesis and also to understand what some of the neural mechanisms were related to this test. For this study, we recruited 14 long-term meditation practitioners, 16 long-term yoga practitioners, and 16 demographically matched controls. And our first hypothesis was that the yoga and meditation practitioners should score higher than the controls, and that was indeed the case. We can see here that both groups scored at later stages than the controls. What was interesting is that the meditation practitioners scored at later stages than the yoga practitioners. And we think this is because with meditation practice, there's much, much more emphasis on going inside and looking at your thoughts and your assumptions and your mental habits, and also paying attention to your behavior during the day. And all of these factors, we think, help contribute to psychosocial development because you're just more aware of what you're actually doing and how your behavior is actually landing on other people. Our second goal was then to understand what the neural metrics were of this test. And so everyone underwent MRI scanning, and our number one region of interest was a region called the posterior cingulate. This is a region that's part of something called the default mode network, which is the network of brain regions that is most closely associated to creating the sense of self and creating our identity. And so when we combine data from all three groups together, we looked and we saw that the scores on this test strongly correlated with the thickness of the posterior cingulate. And so this really suggests that this test has something to do with the self-identity. And what's interesting is that this is the same brain region that we had previously identified in a study of meditation naive people going through an 8-week meditation training program. So it suggests that meditation really is changing this brain region, and this may be how meditation is helping to contribute to psychosocial development. Cortical thickness reflects the number of connections that a particular region has with other parts of the brain. So since there was increased thickness, we wondered, okay, so what other brain regions are talking to this brain region? And could we identify regions that were connected in a stage-dependent manner? And so we found two brain regions that were connected to the DMN that definitely had a stage dependent relationship. And we can see here what was interesting is that um, people at this stage had a negative correlation with between the PCC and these brain regions, but then at the next stage there was a positive correlation. And so the way we interpret this is that yes, this region is changing as we grow and develop, but that something is happening as we shift stages. We're also shifting how the brain is wired between these brain regions. And so this data is very consistent with Levenger's model in that it's not continuous, that there's an actual shift in how the brain is wired that occurs at the transition between each stage. The two regions we identified are the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. This is an area that's involved in uh, understanding experience and integrating our experience into our self-identity. The other region we found was the temporal parietal junction. And this is an area that's involved in seeing things from other people's point of view and is a really key component of empathy. And again, it's a region that we identified changing in just 8 weeks of meditation practice. So again, it suggests that these practices really can do things to help promote psychosocial development. So in conclusion, our data demonstrate that yes, yoga and meditation seem to promote psychosocial development. And the data help validate both the model and the test used to assess the model by demonstrating that development does occur in stages, and also that the brain regions captured by the test are related to the self and they're not related to intelligence. And so finally, the data altogether provide a novel neural framework for conceptualizing the development of flourishing. Thank you.